So to fly from New York, from LA to New York, where you have 5.5 hour flight, that's without delays. And then you have 3 hour difference. So it's 8.5 hours just before you go to the airport, from the airport, with delays and everything. So practically speaking, if somebody asks a Shaila, you're allowed to fly from LA to New York or to Eretz Yisrael on a Friday morning, the answer is definitely not. To fly from New York to LA, where, say, if you take a flight 7 o'clock in the morning, you arrive at 10 a.m., and it's, let's say, a summer day, so that wouldn't be a problem in technical halacha, providing that the plane is not being delayed. So in other words, you have to leave that, talk not with delays, that you have at least, practically speaking, at least 3.5 hours to arrive before Shabbos, also depending on how far you live from the airport and traffic conditions and all that. But there is a din about people traveling on Shabbos an extended period of time, you wouldn't be allowed to. So to go, let's say another example, to go at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, even if Shabbos comes in, let's say 8 o'clock, but you want to take a trip at 4 o'clock in the afternoon from LA to San Diego, which even without traffic takes close to 3 hours. With traffic it takes 5 hours, 6 hours or whatever, as everybody knows. So then halachically you would not be allowed to drive to San Diego at 4 o'clock Friday afternoon. What?
So what if I get onto a red eye, like Thursday at midnight? Is that changing?
No, that's good. You get in Friday morning. So you have a whole Friday. That's good. I'm talking about leaving Friday morning to New York or Friday afternoon to drive to wherever, to San Diego, where it can take you in good times 3 hours, maybe more or less a little bit, but with traffic at 4 o'clock Friday afternoon yet. So then halachically you wouldn't be allowed to do it. That's it. In fact, somebody asked me today interesting shaila. It's not interesting shaila, it's a crazy situation. They want to know if they can leave the Orient, what?
I was going to say Australia.
Friday afternoon, okay, and then, wait a minute, they leave Friday afternoon and you arrive Friday morning because you go over the date line, you gain a day, right? So the problem is, let's say you're going to leave 3 hours before you cross the date line, okay? And then as soon as you cross the date line, you gain a day, so let's go back to Friday. So really, you're leaving on Friday and coming back on Friday. Are you allowed to take such a flight? The answer is you really can't. You might be able, but in practical halacha, the answer is you can't do it. Because it's very possible, halachically, until you land, you have a din of the place you left. There's many dinim in the Gemara in Pesachim talks about makom shenagu. The din is when I leave from one place to another place, until I come to the other place, I have all the customs of the place I left from. So therefore, let's say you're flying on the plane, so yeah, granted you cross the date line, but where you were, it was still Shabbos. That means you're flying on Shabbos. Now technically, what's wrong with being on a plane on Shabbos? There's not a big deal with that, besides the fact it might not be in the spirit of Shabbos. But the issue is, you can't go to the bathroom. Because when you close the door, the light goes on and off. You can't, there's a lot of issues on the plane. You can't use your reading light, you can't, adjusting the seat, you have to know if it's mechanical or if it's electricity and they're running, whatever. It's a very complicated issue. Bottom line is, the person was told he can't do it. You can't fly Friday afternoon and cross the date line, because first you have to know exactly when you're crossing the date line. And even the date line itself, I'm not getting into it now. There's a very big controversy in contemporary halacha. Years ago, they didn't deal too much with the international date line. They didn't have it so much. But there's about, even in halacha, many, many opinions where the date line actually is. Where is the international date line? It's an imaginary line, but there's different opinions in halacha exactly where the date line is. In fact, there's a very interesting question about Hawaii. According to certain opinions, the date line cuts through Hawaii. So now the question is, if you're in Hawaii, when do you keep Shabbos? Because if you're on this side of the date line, it's Friday. If you're on this side of the date line, it's Shabbos. So where are you when you keep Shabbos? And there have been many people, by the way, in halacha are of the opinion you're not allowed to be in Hawaii on Shabbos. There are opinions in halacha, but in Chabad, the Friedrich Rebbe didn't agree with that. And we go by where the date line is, officially, according to science. And therefore, you know when Friday is, when Shabbos is. But you can't go half a date line on Shabbos, half a day, you know what I mean? Because then you have a shiloh. What are you davening? What are you malacha? What are you allowed to do? What you're not allowed to do? That gets very, what?
Keep like a public Shabbos on Friday.
What do you mean?
They basically don't do muksa.
They don't do malacha at all.
Halacha at all.
And what do you daven? And when do you make kiddush?
That's what I heard when the guys that were there.
Because they were machmir as far as malacha deraisa they weren't doing, not the Lubavitchers. Lubavitchers don't do that. But the other people that go there for whatever reason, they're machmir on Friday, 2 days basically, they don't do malacha min ha-Torah, and it's not, but them they have to, the way they hold, they're not allowed to go Hawaii and Shabbos.
In Alaska, the sunset is about 10 o'clock.
No, that's a different story. Then you go, when you come to places up north, they just opened up a Chabad in Fairbanks, which is even more north than Anchorage. Guy got out there, called me today from there. But it's even more north than Anchorage. And over there you have times of the year that basically you have no night. And during the winter you have no day. So it's a very big shilas. So there is discussed in Poskim what happens if you're in a city where there's no sundown or sunlight or sunrise because it's completely day or completely night. So then there's a letter from the Rebbe. Again, I'm just talking, and nobody should paskin by what we're discussing here. But there's a letter from the Rebbe. You look at the nearest place on the map that has a day and night, and you go by that. But again, what does that mean? It's not so simple. Yeah, but like I told you many times, those guys on Asar B'Tevis, which is in the winter, so they start fasting 9:30 in the morning, and 2:30 the fast is over. So they eat breakfast, and then 2:30 they eat lunch, and the whole fast is from 9:30 to 2:30. But Shivasa B'Tammuz, they fast 24 hours. Because there's no night, so it's mamish a 24-hour fast. And in the summer, the shliach in Anchorage told me that in the summer, you can't make Havdalah before 2 o'clock Saturday night, so most people that are from make Havdalah Sunday morning when they wake up. Because you can't make it because it's still day. I remember one of my daughters was in England during the summer, and she was calling us from the mall at 9 o'clock at night in London. It was another hour to Shabbos. It's like another hour and a half to Shabbos. Because in the summer, up there, England is north, Ireland, all those areas, the Netherlands. So they bring in Shabbos, like 10:30, 11 o'clock is Lichtbenchen and whatever. It's a very interesting thing. Anyway, but coming back to Yeah.
Are these holier places because Shabbos lasts so long?
Shabbos lasts 24 hours.
Shabbos lasts long enough to start also, in the summertime, for example.
No, it's 24 hours. Shabbos is 24 hours. How much of it is day, how much of it is night is a different story.
But can they bring it, let's say it's 10 p.m. Can they bring Shabbos like at 7 have dinner?
No, we have Plaga Mincha, so Plaga Mincha will tell you, it's an hour and a quarter of halachic hours. So yeah, they have very long halachic hours. Because if you count sunrise to sundown, it's basically every hour is going to be like 2 hours.
What do you do when you're crossing the date line the other way? Well, you would literally skip Shabbos.
Yeah, what happens if a guy technically took a plane out of Yom Kippur and flew across the date line, and then he skips Yom Kippur? Or Tisha B'Av. I know a guy once did a Tisha B'Av, but it's not something that should be done. But Yom Kippur, you wouldn't be allowed to do it for a lot of other reasons anyway. But I'm just saying, there's all these interesting traveling shilas that come up. that are very interesting in halacha and how you deal with it. Okay, so anyway, that's as far as traveling on Friday. You have to be very careful. You can't travel in a situation because I can't tell you how many calls I get about people stranded in a car. They're going to the mountains in New York, or they're going to relatives, and they leave late and there's traffic. And according to Google Maps, the Waze, they get there an hour after Shabbos begins, and there's bumper-to-bumper traffic, there's an accident, and you can't budge, you can't go off, you can't get on, and you're stuck, and what do? There's a very complicated shilas, because you're talking about Chilul Shabbos in a car. I mean, every time you step on the brake, you step on the gas pedal, you're desecrating Shabbos. I mean, if you have an 8-cylinder car, you're desecrating 8,000 sparks. Not electric car. Electric car is a different story. It's also Chilul Shabbos. But you have 8-cylinder means there's 8,000 sparks per minute, and 6-cylinder, 6,000 sparks per minute. I mean, it's a really big problem when you're traveling. So you have to know if it's sakon or not sakon. I mean, there's a lot of, but therefore, halachically, people are not allowed to go traveling late on Friday afternoon. Unless you know you're going to get there 3 hours at least before Shabbos. You're just not allowed to, because that's what happens every time. And you can't expect a flat tire, and you can't expect an accident on the highway, that they close up the highway, and it's a terrible thing. I mentioned this every year. One year, counselors from camp, from a day camp here, wanted to go to San Diego, okay, Friday afternoon. They called me up at 4:30, Friday afternoon, and they tell me the following. We're on the on-ramp to the 405 at Wilshire. Okay, 4:30 Shabbos afternoon, Friday afternoon. They're on the on-ramp on Wilshire to the 405 going south. Everybody knows what that is. And it's bumper to bumper on the on-ramp. So they want to know, what should they do? I said, get off the on-ramp and go home and stay in LA for Shabbos. I mean, what are you going to do? There's no way you're going to make it Friday afternoon on the 405 to San Diego. It's just not going to happen. You can't do it. You're not allowed to do it.